How come that life has a word if, which is if? There are events that, if they do happen in life, you ought to have a plan. And those events are 6. When you look back when you're young, there are families that were doing very well as we are growing up, that today don't have much. But also there are the families that didn't have much growing up, but today have something. And I'm going to give you a context what happened. We pay attention to what we call the financial assets, and we never pay. In fact, very many people, when you tell them to, they can easily give you stock of their financial assets. But with only financial assets without this, it will be eroded away. The biggest challenge is majority of the people only focus on 2. We create and then we accumulate. We never think about.
How would you describe yourself to a stranger? Today, we are privileged to be hosted by Mr. Tonny Mugisha at his home here in Kauku. Mr. Mugisha is the co-founder of Eiton Capital. They run the business with the wife, business partners. They are stationed out of Kampala, Nairobi, and Arizona. These are the people that have uncomfortable, unconventional conversations with you about your retirement, about your real estate investments.
First and foremost, I'm a husband to Shelin Mugisha, and later on probably I'll tell you, because we built everything together to where we are. I'm also blessed with, I'm a father to 4 amazing kids. Actually 5, like I've explained to you in the context of the 5. And then everything else comes after that. Okay? But not also to forget, we're God-fearing as a family, because we believe we haven't gotten where we are on our own. It's really by God's grace. Now, after that, all other qualifications then come in. But for me, I think that's the most important thing for me. And it's one thing that keeps me awake every other day. But besides me being a husband, father, and a family man, I'm a chartered financial planner, and I run Eiton Capital. Of course, that's not the first place I've started working from. In my earlier career, I've worked for great organizations, which I believe each and every one of them has played a key vital role to what we are today and hopefully what we are going to be in the future. I've been privileged to work for FedEx Express, which is one of the leading logistics companies. You know, when I used to work with FedEx, they had 2 very key competitors, DHL and FedEx. And the team in FedEx would tell you, we are number 1. And DHL would say, we are number 1. So sometimes I just ask my American bosses and tell them, who is indeed number 1? And sometimes he told me, you know, in some markets, DHL is number 1. In some markets, FedEx, we are number 1. But when you look at it holistically, FedEx is number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but I enjoyed my time in FedEx because I really got to understand the value of logistics. It's a courier and logistics company. I worked with them right after university. And I worked there for close to 6 years. And I got an opportunity to work across multiple markets, in their Ugandan office, in their Kenyan office, but also during my tenure, I was able to travel in different jurisdictions where they had their operations as a way for learning. And I later on moved, you know, just like any other young man trying to look for the next big opportunity. I moved to Aramex, which is Arab American Express, which is right now I think is owned by the royal family of Dubai. And I was part of the team that supported them to market penetration in Uganda and several other African countries. And my last employer was Shell, where I spent about 9 years in different capacities, and where I picked interest in working with families that later on led me to start our own company, which is Eiton Capital. Usually people ask me, what's Eiton Capital? So E-I-T-O-N. So E-I stands for Shelin. So we picked it from Shelin's name. And T-O-N is Tony.
The 2.
Yeah, so the 2 of us. And we've been able to grow it to what it is now. And We manage close to 210 family offices.
Oh.
We have been privileged to work across 4 continents. We have clients that spread across 4 continents. And like I shared with you, Edgar, it's not by own understanding, but by, I think by God's grace as well. Every other day, we wake up with a new challenge, a new opportunity, and we take each and every one of them as a blessing. Because one of the biggest thing about our job is not only do you have to share, but you learn. And one of the key things, when you look at a scope of our clients, our oldest client is 86, and our youngest client is 27. And both of them have very interesting stories. So the 27-year-old client walked into our office, not an appointment. But luckily enough, I was in office, and he said, I'm looking for Eiton Capital, and I would like to have a meeting with Tony. And one of my colleagues asked them, are you on appointment? And I said, I'm not on appointment, but, and that shows the young generation how they work. And they said, I'm not on appointment, but one thing I know is if he's around, he can't refuse to, to meet me for about 5-10 minutes.
Conversion.
And I found it very interesting because that level of confidence, I mean, looking at myself at 27-year-old, looking out to come and speak to a financial planning organization. And I got an opportunity to talk to him, and he told me, I know you don't have a lot of time, and I thought that if I actually set up an appointment, you'll probably not give me priority because I'm not the kind of client you're probably looking out for. But I have a major problem. I'm 27. I've been earning a very above the normal range of pay, and I believe I'm putting my money to the wrong places. So I actually need help. So I said, okay. I mean, just what came to my mind was, if I was that 27-year-old and I was that ambitious, then it's important for me to listen to this young man. And when I sat down, interestingly, he works for Oracle, a big company. So I told him, okay, fine. We have a normal brief of what do you do, and he told me I earned $8,000. I said, what? Because in this market, you rarely find that kind of, And later on, I got to understand he's a tech person. He got an opportunity. He works remotely. And here he was. He's saying, I actually have a problem. And not every other 27-year-old will probably realize that I have a problem. Because for him, he noticed that I've been working for 8 months. I'm getting a very significant pay, but I'm not putting it to good use. So that's my youngest client. I continue to learn every day. In fact, when I have some tech problems, it's a person I ask, do you know about this? It's very, very knowledgeable. And then my oldest client, 86. 86, but with a mind of pretty much like a 35-year-old. And Edgar, I've really learned a lot from that man in terms of what real life is. Because many times we don't get opportunities to go there and see what's there. We actually just face it when we are there. Or very rarely do we get people to speak to us of what is there. So I can say that the two give us a big scope. But the biggest question probably is, what do we do for these families? As Eiton, as I've shared with you for my journey, I worked in logistics, and I crossed into management and business reengineering and business growth. And I think at Shell I found my passion to work with families. And by then I was handling the export mining and power sector, where we're working closely with families. Until today, I'll tell you that very many families have assets that have failed to fully optimize them. And the good thing about Shell had always noticed that fuel will never be the only source of income for us. In fact, when you look at them right now, they have very many other sources of income. They are very big on convenience retailing right now. So if you go today, you'll see a Java House, you'll see a KFC, you'll see, the Select Shop. They're trying to innovate every other day. But in that sector then that I was handling, they noticed that Shell needs to provide energy to these key assets of mining and power. But I won't focus mainly on the mining space because for the longest, you know that most of land in Africa is owned by families. This land has very many unique natural resources. But how do you create a value proposition for the family without losing the asset? right? And you already know the families already they have their own challenges. But as we navigate those challenges, how do we optimize what we have without losing ownership as we sort out our challenges? So I was tasked to try to create value propositions so that as Shell, they can be able to sell energy that is able to extract those resources so that then the off-takers can actually be able to do business. So the ownership hasn't changed. The owners of the land can still get value irrespective of the differences they have, right? Shell can actually sell their energy. And the off-taker, who's probably interested in those resources, is able to also be in business. So I go to work close with families to understand what really families want, what challenges them. And I was privileged that as an employer, they really invested heavily. And beyond their own investment, I also did my own investment. But I think what really stood out is mainly the different families that I was able to work with. Some I was able to continue to work with them till today, even after leaving my job. So we set up Eiton Capital to say, okay, fine. How do we get our experience that we've been able to acquire on this journey? And this time, we don't want to give it to only corporate organizations. Can we go to the smallest unit of a family? Can we have individuals? Can we engage families? Because these enterprises are comprised of people who come from families. So that's how we set up Eiton Capital. And when we did that, we said, okay, which areas are we going to focus on? And at Eiton Capital, we focus on 5 areas. The first one, we noticed that however much wealth one will create, without you doing the rightful risk management, it will be eroded away. And I got to know about this when I got to understand about the different stages of wealth. And like I shared with you, much as I share with families, I also learn from the families. I was able to understand that out of the 4 stages, actually a majority of people only focus on 2 stages. And the first stage, which is wealth creation, every single person of us wakes up every day to go and work, either as an 8 to 5 or as a business owner or as a serial entrepreneur. You're trying to create something, right? That's on wealth creation. And then, once we've been able to create it, we always want to accumulate more, which is wealth accumulation. And actually, as we are discussing, I was asking you, how much is enough? Because those stages got me to think, what really is enough? There should be something that's enough. Okay? And because most people focus on only those 2, they never get to the other 2, the remaining 2 to make the 4. The third one is wealth protection, because once you've gotten it, once you've accumulated it, and then how have you protected it? And how have you transferred it? So there's wealth creation. In fact, wealth protection comes right after wealth creation. So wealth protection comes after wealth creation. Then after wealth protection, then you accumulate. So you safeguard what you have, protect it, then you accumulate more. All right? And then, as we all know, as time goes by, we then prepare to transfer it, being good stewardship and being able to transfer it. So the wealth creation, wealth protection, wealth accumulation, and wealth transfer. The biggest challenge is majority of the people only focus on 2. We create, and then we accumulate. We never think about the wealth protection, and we never think about the wealth transfer. So we said if we are really going to see how best we are going to, first and foremost, support our own nationals, how are we going to be able to use our experience to do that? So we said we are going to focus on risk management. It's very important that as people do the creation and do the accumulation, we need to tell them the pitfalls, okay, that we've been able to see in our working experience. And then we said, okay, fine. So if you do the risk management correctly, then what next? If you've done the risk management correctly, then the next one is investment. Because if you've done the risk management correctly, it only gives you room for you to actually explore in investment. So investment became a second area of our focus. And again, focusing on individuals, families, and the bigger part, which is enterprises, which again I shared with you because we believe the people, the individuals and the families as what comprise of the enterprise. Then the third area that we focus on is estate planning. And estate planning, we collaborate with the law firms Because at the end of the day, when you talk about estate planning, it's a 6-year process. Because most time when people talk about estate planning, which is now the wealth transfer, people only think about wills or holding companies, but it is way beyond that. It's way beyond that. It includes asset transfer, it includes retirement planning, it includes charity, it includes inheritance, it includes tax planning, wills and trusts. It's a whole 6-year process. I said, okay, fine. So we noticed there's a very big gap. We actually need to come into that space and do collaborations. We collaborate heavily with different law firms to enable clients to do the rightful estate planning. Then we said, okay, fine. So if I've done estate planning, I've done the risk management correctly, I've done the investment correctly, I've safeguarded the estate in the right way, it means I can continue to scale. Okay, so we then said, okay, fine. So if you're actually going to look at scaling, depending the estate planning each and every person has chosen, what other space are we going to focus on? So we said, okay, fine. We can also look at business reengineering. So when you look at most of the work we do is in risk management, investment, estate planning, and business reengineering. And business reengineering is where we help businesses prepare them for investor readiness. We also come in terms of private equity, in terms of sweat equity, to add value to those enterprises and then be able to scale them from a family perspective, but also from an individual perspective. So the areas we focus on. And yeah, we are glad that bits by bits, we believe we are trying to do our best. And we hope the best is yet to come. So that's what we do. And every other day we continue to grow our network of family offices. Our work is mainly highly on recommendation. But just like any other business, you always try to explore new things as well. And we're on a journey as well for growth in terms of how we can continue to grow. So we have offices here in Uganda at Acacia Mall. We also have offices in Nairobi to support these two markets. We're exploring other places as well. We are hoping to finalize an office out of Asia, hopefully by end of next year. We're still going through the different nitty-gritties. We are doing all this to be able to open up opportunities for investments. It's part of investments. How do you diversify into different markets, but also how do we attract investment back into Africa, which we believe is the next big thing. And we also have several collaborations throughout the US, which also supports the US market.
Okay, and from your experience working in the different markets, yes. You talked about 4 continents.
Yes.
What lessons do you draw from the different ones? And when you look at your anchoring point, which is Kampala, yeah. What do you think, what has been the appetite for people to take up such solutions?
So what I think is happening now is, in perspective of Uganda, most what we call the wealthy individuals today are first-time wealth creators. What I mean by that is they are self-made. But also that goes to, of course, as a country's history and all that, but it's also very important for us to actually acknowledge that most, what we call the wealthy today in Uganda are the first-time wealth creators. They have created it on their own, which becomes a very big challenge because these people have not gone through a process on then what happens next. Right? Because when you look at the our demographics, you look at, I don't know whether my data is correct, but the last I checked, almost 70 or 75% are below the age of 35. Okay, and the rest are spread across the rest, which is a very big percentage of our population. Then the other bigger tier, which probably goes from 35 all the way to 80, right? It still holds a smaller percentage. But that percentage is where what we call the wealthy are today. They are first-time wealth creators. The biggest hurdle we have is, first and foremost, is for them to acknowledge that much as we have been able to create what we have today, it doesn't guarantee that we're going to be able to keep it. That's the first one. The second one, they also need to acknowledge that what is happening in all other markets where there's been successful transfer of wealth, it does not self-execute. There's actually an intended process. Because when I work in those multiple markets, I work with a family and they have about 4 to 5 financial advisors, and each and every one of them specializing in a different space. Okay? So the biggest challenge here is the first-time wealth creators are getting it very difficult to acknowledge that I'll need support to be able to move from where I am in terms of not to grow the business, maybe that you already know, but what to safeguard what you've already been able to attain. And because there's a very big gap there, a family works so hard or individuals work so hard only not to, and we've just been talking about some of the examples, only at the best time where probably another generation will probably come and start off from there, it actually distributes everything and the entire family restarts all over again. So, but there's also something that is happening. These high net worth individuals, their kids are coming of age. Those are the kids who are below the age of 35. They've been taken to Ivy universities globally. They've seen what is happening. They've come back with their expertise. And they're saying, okay, this is how you've been able to run to where you are. But we believe we can actually do it in a different way. And right there, Edgar, there's a very big challenge because the person is saying, I created it all the way to here. So what are you telling me now? But remember, the same person has fully educated these people to go to the best, get the best exposure, get learnings, and come and help them in the process. Now, the people that are supposed to help that conversation of this rising generation and the current generation to be able to harmonize and forge a way forward is where the gap is. And that's why you see when we work with very many, in this, I'm giving in context of this market, there are very many families we work with where children do not want to work with their parents. I've worked with a number of them where, and they've disagreed on principle, and some of them have actually gone back to work for blue chip companies. So the biggest hurdle we have right now is that level of openness where the wealth creators today have to acknowledge that, yes, I've been able to create this, but I need support to be able to see how it can actually be able to move to the next stage. That's where the biggest challenge is, because now, unlike other markets, all the continents we've been able to work on, there's a proper defined process. There are enterprises that actually do that. Even their laws are fully defined in terms of how do you plan an estate and many other things. But I want to believe that it's a general problem, because this week I was talking to a doctor, and the doctor was telling me, I was doing an estate plan for one of the doctors, and was telling me, and we were joking about it, and he was telling me, Tony, this challenge is not only in your industry. To that, we prescribe people what to do. But once the person is fine for a week or two and they are well, next time they feel the same problem, they don't come back to the doctor. They'll just go directly to the pharmacy and say, the doctor gave me last time this prescription. This must be the problem. They don't want to go back to the doctor. So, but I believe with these kind of conversations and clients coming out to share their journeys, which is happening because also some families, not the majority of them, but some of them have acknowledged that actually we need to get professional guidance to be able to move from where we are to take the next generation to the next stage.
From your experiences working with families, with business entities, providing that kind of solution, what is the uptake and how do you initiate such what I would call unconventional conversation?
Yes, the unconventional, the thing is, as financial planners, we are trained in that because I'll tell you, Edgar, each family is unique, totally unique. And what bothers a family, because most people think it's really only finance, but there are many things beyond finance. Because when we are looking at the holistic planning, we look at 7 spheres. And those 7 spheres, each of them is quite detailed. You see, finance is only one, which is the financial part. But when you look at the other 6, the key one is family. Edgar, believe it or not, there are families that have that have been blessed with significant wealth that probably are not in the rightful, talking terms, or do not agree on a couple of things. They may probably even be working together, but they may disagree on very many things. So the element of family is very, very important. And when I talk about family, it's not only the individual's family. It goes beyond you and your wife and your children. It spreads all the way to your parents, to your spouse's parents, to your nephews, your nieces, to the bigger scope of family. That's one component. The second one is health. Again, health is one of those things that today continues to become very expensive. And I don't think very many people are paying attention to it. It's actually it's one of the most rising costs. And when we talk about health, we don't talk about only physical health. It's also mental health. So when you're talking about family, which is the first one, and you talk about health in a perspective of not only yourself, but also for your family members, because you can actually be in good health, but because you have a loved one who doesn't actually not going through the best of health, it becomes a bother to you, and sometimes even to even affect your financial planning, because you probably have to chip in when you have to. And like I've shared, each family is unique. I'm just giving you a snippet so that you see how each intertwines with the other. Then after health, there's education. And today education is becoming a very, with artificial intelligence and very many things. Sometimes I sit with families and tell them, do we really need to keep our kids going to school? It's a valid question. But again, what are the options you have? So when we talk about education, people only take it in terms of people going to school. But in my perspective, and with the experience I've been able to work with different families, I've noticed that education goes beyond one going to school. In fact, education starts the day we leave school. Because Edgar, as we speak, we're coming to the end of this week, every single day you're learning something new, if you choose to, right? So education is beyond the normal education. It spans off to what else am I learning beyond the education? Am I preparing for the right education as well? So it's quite broad. Then after education, you have work. Most people think that, and I'm sharing this with you because I work with a number of families whose children live off trust. They don't have to work. If someone is earning upwards of 15 million a month, whether they work or not, that person definitely doesn't want to work. Even those that will work with more, with $10,000 and upwards. But I've also noticed that, and I just give you an example for one of the clients. I think I must have shared that story with you. One of the clients, they earn about $4,000 a month off a trust, second generation trust. And this he's about 32 years of age and fully trained engineer in Ivy universities. So he comes back to Kenya and he wants to actually work. He wants to work in a power company. And he was very specific. I want to work because with much also privileges come, because you come with a family, you say, I want to work. I've studied this and I want to work here. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that because you actually have to go through a proper application process and they choose the best. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to get the opportunity with several attempts. And I remember the matriarch calling me and telling me, you need to have a conversation with this gentleman because I see he's going down, the wrong journey. And I said, what's the problem? I said, he's spending most of the time focusing on other things. I don't think he's even continuing to pursue opportunities. So I luckily enough, I was in Nairobi by then, and I had a coffee with him, and he told me, Tony, yes, I get money, I'm comfortable, I can drive around, I can do things, but I don't feel satisfied. I'm not content because I need some place to go, to wake up to and work. So I told him, can we get another place? Can we set up a business? He said, no, I want to work for that company. So after sitting down with the other advisors, I said, but can we explore an opportunity where we can get him an internship opportunity in that company? And one of the advisors I remember telling me, yes, that's an internship opportunity. It's not work. It will not make sense to him unless he's getting a paycheck. So I was able to talk to one of the members in the company. I said, listen, one of my clients would like, even before they come to work, I can guarantee you they have the expertise. The only thing we want you to support us is we want to make sure, I told him the story about what is happening to him. And I told him, I want you to do me a favor. Get him in there for at least 8 months. As the estate, we are willing to pay him money, but we want it to come from the company. So the company can invoice us, we pay the company. And I remember the lady told me, Tony, we can't do that. We can't do this. I said, okay, fine. If you can't do it, then help us. Then said, okay, fine. The least I can do is I can try to get him in as an intern. No guarantees. And when I get him as an intern, maybe after maybe a year, we'll probably see how we can get him into the organization. And she was kind enough. I mean, her being maybe a parent as well, and we're able to get him to start to work. Then the biggest challenge was, how do we manage to get him money as a paycheck that comes in? And after 2 weeks, right, as we are trying to figure out how are we going to manage the payment, this guy's life turned around. He was waking up at 4 o'clock. He was so excited, not that they're actually going to pay him more money, but it was giving him purpose, him getting up and dressing. And I remember the HR called me, I think after 3 weeks, and told me, Tony, I think we can hire this guy. Right? Because what was actually getting him the satisfaction, I remember we were trying to figure out how we're going to pay him. The month is coming to an end, how are we going to pay? But I remember he said, we are actually going to give him an incentive. We actually structure it as because the value, he was waking up to something, not that he was working for money, but the fact that he would wake up and know I'm going somewhere. Now, Edgar, you need to understand this is a very high net worth family, but he was struggling because he didn't have what to do, not because he didn't have income, what to do. Right? So work is also very important. I've spent a lot of time there because most people think that when you've been privileged and you have so much, you don't necessarily, work may not really be something important to you, but it actually gives you purpose. Today he goes on to be a very great executive in that organization. I think he's going greater places. There are very many other stories, but that's another component, which is work. Then there's another one, which is financial, which is pretty about how you plan your financials, where you invest, and we spend most of our time there. I don't want to dwell much there. And then the next one is community. When we speak about communities, like where we stay, our work area can actually be a community, where spouses come from. The biggest question is, what are we doing in these communities? What are we trying as we are moving around, saying, okay, we are able to mobilize. And when you look at the road, I'm able to say, okay, if I put in some great effort in here, and I was able to have honest conversations with a number of people as we made this come to life. So the thing is also in community, what are we doing in community? And then lastly is spirituality. Now, all those 7 spheres in the outlook of holistic planning are so important. And each of them is very broad, very, very broad. Now, because few people use experts in that process, you'll find that someone's very successful in the financial part and maybe work, but the rest are suffering. So the role of the financial advisor say, okay, how can you be doing well holistically? And how can we measure it? Because how can we come up with a yardstick for each? Because everyone is unique, Edgar. Everyone's totally unique. So when you look at that holistic approach and then see how is it impacting families today and individuals and all these groups of people, you tend to ask, or you tend to make an evaluation on all these 7. What am I doing right now? Because we never get that evaluation. We don't have experts supporting us on that journey that are trained and fully understand on how each of them should work. We never take stock. So we find that financially we're doing very well at the expense of everything else. Or we're doing very well at work at the expense of all the others. So it's very, very important that as a nation, as we continue to grow, we start to have honest conversations in terms of the holistic approach of financial planning.
You talk about 4 very key elements of, or you call them holistic.
Yes.
Way. How do those translate? Because when you talk about them You're looking for fulfillment.
Yes.
How do you, at a personal level, extrapolate that in your personal life?
Yes. Is it this 4 stages of wealth? I think for me to define, first to fully get to explain them, I want to break down for you what's the most complex issue, which is true wealth. Because when we look at wealth, what's really wealth and what's true wealth? The two are different. And also I'm going to be able to define for you, again, from my experience. And most of these contexts, I actually get these experiences working with customers. And that's why I shared with you that it's a great opportunity that we get to be able to see in our kind of work, to be able to learn, but also be able to share with our clients. I want to explain 3 things that I think all intertwine to each other, because when we talk about generational wealth, there are 2 words. There's generation and there's wealth. Okay? That's one thing I'm going to talk about. The second one I want to talk about is the stages of wealth, which I've given you, the 4 stages that you asked me to give clarity about. And then I'm going to try to put everything in context, even to my personal life and how I perceive it. So for me, in my definition of true wealth, because most of the time when I ask people, what comes to your mind when you think about wealth? You know what comes to people's minds, Edgar? There are 4 things. The first thing that comes to people's mind is money. Anyone you ask about wealth, they say money. The second one is property. Others will tell you business enterprises. And others will tell you shares. And I can guarantee you're going to, some probably want to ask for a number of people. And you tell me, ask 10 people, will you get one of those 4 answers? Or in all the answers they give you, at least 2 of them fit in there. So people think about money, property, businesses, and shares or stocks. Now, in my perspective, true wealth is beyond those 4. Like I've shared with you, I've had an opportunity to work with multiple clients across different age brackets, across different continents. True wealth, because what we've talked about, the 4, not that they are important, not important, they are very important. But you see, those 4 are only financial assets. So if they are financial assets, does it mean there are other assets? Yes, there are other assets. Now, and you're actually going to notice that they intertwine. So those financial assets are tangible, things you can touch them, you can feel them, those are tangible assets. Now, the 2 that I've been able to understand on my journey for financial planning for very many families, these other 2 are non tangible. We have what we call the human assets. And I want to be able to define each and every one of them. And then we have what we call intellectual assets. Now, human assets include things like family. The fact you're part of a family, you're an asset to that family. Whether you're productive or non-productive, but because each of family members have different abilities. But the fact that you're part of that family, you have family asset. Another example for human assets is character, time. Things, you notice each of these things, you can't touch them.
Non-tangible.
Non-tangible, right? Then we have what we call intellectual assets. Intellectual assets are things like wisdom. Each and every one of us that is gifted in a different way. God is a very amazing person. Each of us is gifted in a different way. Each of us has unique abilities or what we call a certain ability of wisdom that God has given them. Then we have different experiences which we acquire. Like I've shared with you the different companies I've been able to work with. That is my work experience that I've been able to acquire over that time. All right? Then ideas. When we're walking behind there, we are brainstorming some ideas or sharing with you some of my ideas. And you also share with me some perspective. Okay? We have things like systems that you've been able to work with. We have skills. I know you're very good in terms of your camera and your, So it's a skill that is, and each and every one of us is given those skills. So I'm trying to point you out that we pay attention to what we call the financial assets, and we never pay. In fact, very many people, when you tell them they can easily give you stock of their financial assets. Very few are able to give you stock of their human assets and intellectual assets. And this is what's very interesting, Edgar. When I've been able to engage with very many families, in fact, families, the ones that you see, that families that spend a lot of money to prepare for generational wealth, they actually pay attention to the human assets and the intellectual assets. The example I've been giving you for a son in Nairobi for one of my clients, what were we paying attention to? The human asset. We know this asset has the ability. They probably don't have the opportunity right now. But before they take themselves into a different direction, can we make sure that we do what we have to do to make sure that that asset can become productive? So these families that are actually doing what we call generational wealth transfer, they're not transferring the financial assets. In fact, the financial assets today with big families, if you hear about hedge funds only manage the transfer of financial assets. These two is where these families are spending fortunes using professionals to prepare the next generation to be able to take on the big responsibility for these financial assets. Because if you don't do that, it doesn't matter what kind of financial assets you have. If you've not developed the human asset and the intellectual asset, this will be wiped away completely. And that's why you see, Edgar, I can give you a perspective here in Uganda. When we are growing up, their families, and each and every one of us that is listening or probably will read this story, when you look back when you're young, there are families that were doing very well as we are growing up, that today don't have much. But also there are the families that didn't have much growing up, but today have something. And I'm going to give you a context what happened. So there are families who will actually grow the financial assets. But if you've not grown the human assets and intellectual assets, it doesn't matter what kind of big financial assets you have, they will be eroded away. And then families that didn't have these financial assets that focused on the human assets and intellectual assets, we go to school, we look for opportunities here, they're able to recreate financial assets. So when I actually engage with most of these families, they tell me, out of the three now that we know, we can actually forfeit the financial assets because you can recreate them. The financial assets are tangible. With the two, you can recreate. But with only financial assets without these two, it will be eroded away. So what are families doing? When we talk about generational wealth, which I believe in, the true wealth is a combination of the financial assets, intellectual assets, and the human assets. When you're doing a transfer of generational wealth, you're transferring the three, not one. Right? Now, let me come to generation. Because when we talk about, that's on the wealth part. Okay, so I've been able to give context on wealth, what I believe is true wealth. And even that wealth, there are 4 stages, which I would like to come back to after I explain the generation. There are things that we take for granted. When people hear people talk about the Gen Zs, you talk about people talking about the Alpha, people fail to understand that those are actual generations. To date, we have real generations that are there. We have the silent generation, which I think the oldest right now is about 80 years. Then we have, I think after the silent generation, then we have the baby boomers. The baby boomers, I think the youngest is about 65 years of age. Then we have Generation X. We are about in 45. The youngest is about 45. Then we have the millennials. After the millennials, then we have, I think the Gen Zs? And then we have the Alpha. When people don't understand the word of generational wealth, I want to explain it to you so that because when people understand the context behind this in our real scenario, then we can be able to make informed decisions. So when we talk about generations, we mean those are the 6 generations that are currently there. So when we talk about transfer of generational wealth, we mean each and every one of us, each of us has something to give. If you believe you don't have anything to give, you have liabilities. But each person, you either give assets or you give liabilities. You'll have to give one of the two. And to also give you perspective, by the way, we are in the process of the largest or the most or greatest wealth transfer process. It is already taking shape, where almost over $100 trillion are going to move from the baby boomers. Those are people who are 65 years, the youngest being 65 years of age, which is the real context here right now in Uganda. the percentage of Uganda maybe is part of that. But it's happening global, it's not only here. Money is going to move, wealth is going to move from those 65, from baby boomers, all the way down the generation to alpha. The only thing you and me will have control over, or can decide to have control over, that as it's moving from the baby boomers, because you have a representative in the baby boomer today, it goes down your generation through your lineage. The movement will happen. What you don't have control, will it move within my lineage or not? So the families that are preparing for that, they are preparing to make sure that as that great wealth transfer is happening, to some extent, it's trickling down directly within my lineage. And that's why they spend heavily on making sure they do those different processes and do them rightly. So for families that have not done anything, the transfer will definitely happen. But what you can't guarantee, it may not happen in your line. We're talking about one of the people we are talking about right now, of course, for purposes of we'll probably not mention names. But when you look at the story, typically you can see that for sure the distribution, all the wealth is going to be distributed. But after that distribution is done, what I can guarantee you, it will not keep in his lineage. Whoever has been distributed to will also have to offset so that it then goes into different. You put it in context, in Uganda's perspective. If you own a property in say, for example, Kampala, that property was previously owned by someone else. If you're privileged and it was passed down to you, then maybe people before you did a very good estate plan. But majority of the time, you probably find that you probably go out and buy it out on your own. So what has happened, whether the sellout purpose was to move to a better place for another person, but the fact is actually the transfer has happened. So that is, when we talk about the generational transfer or generational wealth transfer, that is the process. But the stages for you to create that wealth has the four, because you wake up and work for it, which is the wealth creation. After you've been able to work for it, you then think about, okay, how can I protect what I have? After I've been able to protect it, how can I add more? And then how can I prepare to be transferring it? Now, the fact that we are moving in a world whereby you need to do the four concurrently. Why? Because none of us has a guarantee on time. It is no longer about age, the uncertainties. Because life has two very interesting dates. This thing we call life, it has two interesting dates. The first date is the DOB. DOB is the date of birth. Every one of us knows our date of birth. Right? I'll be surprised if you find someone. Long ago, there are people who never knew the date of birth. But today, many of them know their date of birth. And the second date is what we call the DOD, the date of death. No one knows it. Now, in between those two dates, in between, that's what we call life. And I don't know, Edgar, whether, God is a very amazing. I don't know whether the word life, because in my perspective, when you take out the two letters, I and F, that's if, right? Because in between those two dates, there's life. Now, in that life, it has very many good events. The day, we got the different qualifications, the day we met our spouse, the day we had our children, the day we got married, the day, but also has some challenging things of life which are not the best of life. Okay? But in that life, there are things, all there events that if they do happen, when I was looking at that word, I said, how come that life has a word IF, which is if? There are events that happen, if they do happen in life, you ought to have a plan. And those events are 6. The first event, and by the way, each of them doesn't have a time frame. It can happen anytime. The first is permanent disability. Whether you walk, whether you drive, whether you ride, you have that risk. Interesting thing, one of my clients moved 2 years ago, moved to Entebbe. They used to stay at Kololo. And they told me, Tony, it's not safe to run in Kololo. She never had any challenge in Kololo. The only thing they're saying that there are many cars and I don't want to, so they moved away from Kololo and moved to Entebbe. One fateful day when they are running, early in the morning at 7:40, someone was coming from the nightclub and they knocked them. and she fractured her leg. She was in a cast for almost coming to 2 years in a place you least expect. So she was immobile for almost 2 years. It was actually open compound fracture. I mean, she had all the cars there, she had the drivers, but the fact that she came out to go and jog at such a fateful day. So each and every one was at risk of permanent disability. Luckily for enough, she was able to get back onto her feet. The second one, and these are life events that if they do happen, we ought to have a plan, because the reason that takes a family from comfort to hand to mouth is a small thing. It's just a small thing, like not having a plan for any of those events. The second one is critical illness. Critical illness includes things like a stroke, body requirement of organ transplant. The thing is, critical illness probably can take you some time, but you can get fine over it over some time. So the second one is critical illness. Today, to be diagnosed with any of those critical illnesses is not about age. Why? It's because of lifestyle. We don't exercise much. Our food is not as much healthy if you're not very cautious. The number of things that today you don't need any history in your family to be diagnosed with any of those critical illnesses. Can it have an impact on you financially? Absolutely. Just like permanent disability, it can, because you can no longer move to be able to do what you're doing. Now, the one that's also interesting that is third is terminal illness. You see the difference between critical illness and terminal illness? Critical illness, you can get well over time. It could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, it could even be 5 years, but you can get well. Terminal illness on the other end, right? You'll have to live it with the rest of your life. And you see, with advancement in technology and healthcare and good medication is coming out, there's no doubt. But Edgar, it's coming at a crazy cost because of the big story about Big Pharma. So it's also coming at a huge cost. How well are you preparing for that? Because the things I'm telling you about, they happen to every single person who's between those 2 days, the DOB and DOD, and is living life. Those if events are applicable to everyone. There's none of us that is proof of all those 6 I'm sharing. The fourth, that is becoming very rampant, not only here in Uganda, but globally, is something called long-term care. Long-term care is where you lose any of your 4 living abilities. By living ability, we mean taking yourself to the washroom, grooming yourself, feeding yourself. You know, where the key elements of your personal living. You know, long ago you'll probably say, I'm going to get a relative of mine and they will come and I'll support them financially. It's changing. Because now that relative that you wanted to come today is saying, if I am deployed to do elsewhere, how much will they be paying me? It's going to become a conversation. Right? In other markets where it's not even negotiable, it is a whole big industry and it's very, very expensive. The fifth is children's education. With lots of disruptions, one may think that probably it's becoming cheaper. It's becoming very costly, but also it's becoming very elusive. What can I do? What can I live out? But irrespective of whatever is going to come out, it definitely has to be planned for. That's why you see that very many people it becomes one of the key elements, as especially the young working class. It's one thing they really prioritize. And then the last one is last expenses or death. Those events, each and every one of them has a huge implication on the financial position of every single person. And to take out the last one, which is death, the other ones are very painful because you're there. You know, death you've gone. But the rest, you're actually still there. So those are events that when you look at, in fact, that's what defines risk management. That as I do everything else, what are the unforeseen things that if they do happen, what do I have in my place? So this we call the items that in life that if they do happen, you ought to have a plan for them. Those are very, very, very critical. They determine what we call risk management profile. Once you've been able to say that, okay, fine, I don't have a plan for this, I don't have a plan for this, because today, there are solutions. You know, Edgar, it's not like 20 years ago where there are no solutions. Today, you can actually have solutions for each and every one of them. But sometimes we don't know. Why? Because we don't get professionals to help us on to planning. So if you are actually thinking, okay, fine, how do I then start my planning? Because first you need to protect what you have for you to be able to accumulate it. So before you even think about the creation, you need to ascertain these risks. And then as you create, then you protect, then you accumulate, and then you plan to transfer.
At what point would you suggest for someone to start having conversations as such? Do I wait on to the point where I'm in this job and I'm ready for my pension? At what point do you advise someone to take up, start having such conversations?
I'll actually recommend for as soon as someone starts to work, they actually need to have these conversations with professionals. You need to actually have a financial advisor having a conversation with you. Sometimes what you need is not that you're actually going to execute, but first and foremost, you need to know that there's a gap and the solution for it is this. I may not have the abilities to do it, but that does not give me an excuse not to prepare to do it once I'm ready to do it. The biggest challenge is this, because we don't even take the first step to know the gap, we will never plan for it. And like those events I told you about, they don't care what kind of investments you have. They don't care what kind of savings you have. They will wipe it away. They can actually wipe out any amount of estate. So the best way for you to, as long as you have an income, either as a business owner or as a person doing an 8 to 5, first conversation you need to have, how do I protect this income tomorrow if I'm not able to wake up and work because of these events? That becomes the first conversation. And it is one thing to have some kind of plan is better than none at all. Meaning I can say, yes, this event, if it is to happen, I have a plan in place to mitigate me for 6 months. It is better than not having anything in place.
Where do you start?
With my experience working with very many clients, I think we need to start planning for our retirement the day we start to work. And retirement means different thing from one person to another. Totally. Because to some, it's an age. To others, it's what will I do when I'm as a passion. Every single person has a different meaning for their retirement. And I want to give you in my perspective what I think retirement is. I think for me, retirement is you being able to continue to live the lifestyle you desire. Because again, Edgar, some people will be happy to be somewhere on the farm. Other people would say, for me, what gives me peace is to go into community and impact community. Each of us has a different passions and different lifestyle that they desire to maintain. So I think for me, what really makes a lot of sense is when you think about retirement is, how can I continue to live the same lifestyle that you desire, because we are all unique, without necessarily working? It doesn't mean that I won't work, but it means that if I don't work, I can still continue to live that lifestyle. And then it allows you a proper runway to prepare that, because it evolves. You see, for a person who is starting out today, before you have a family, your aspiration probably will say, I want to have 3 kids. But in actual sense, life happens and you have 6. As you actually move through that middle part, which is life, the desire for retirement may vary and may change as you progress, because your retirement will probably be different when you're alone. It becomes different or makes a different direction now when you share and your spouse. Now when the kids actually grow of age, and if you're lucky and probably they want to work into your business enterprise, it also becomes something else. However way it evolves, you should plan for it. And that's why we get it wrong. It evolving doesn't mean that we shouldn't plan for it. We should plan as it evolves, but we are planning for it. When we talk about retirement plan, it's quite broad. It's from places like where exactly do you want to stay, what exactly do you want to do, How does it fit into already with the infrastructure that you already have around yourself? But you can't figure it out on your own. Because we can't think about retirement when we are there, which is the case. Most people think about retirement when they're already into retirement. We need to start thinking about retirement the day we start to work. And how do we do that? Having such honest conversations. You see, I was just throwing you my idea and saying, what do you think about this idea? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to reaffirm my retirement plan. Will it work? Is it something I'm just thinking may make sense to me, but may not make sense to the outer, to an external person, And as you have these conversations, it reaffirms you. Then you're able to ask, okay, what can I do? How can I accelerate it? What will it even cost? Because for a person who wants to be on the ranch somewhere, or the person who wants to stay in a small town like Kauku here and probably have some guests behind here, and another one who wants to travel the world, their cost will be different. So it definitely has to be planned for separately. But because we're not having those conversations, you see, I was talking to an organization where they asked us to come in and prepare the people going into retirement. And I told them I'm the wrong person for that. It's too late. If you're calling us in for the people you want to go into retirement next week, we don't want to do justice. Of course, later on we went in and put something together to give. But I told the management, this should be an annual conversation in one of the town halls where you're actually going to be able to have these people come in. And as you continue to, for a person who has come in, who has started to work and start thinking about, okay, there's this thing called retirement. What exactly is it in their perspective? What will it be for me? They do it the first year, the second year. Maybe the third year they can start doing something.
What's your plan?
My plan. My retirement plan is a very simple one. So right behind home here, we have approximately 2 acres. I go all the way, touch the lake. We are hoping to put a boutique hotel. And that's my plan with my wife. Again, the kids have their own aspirations. And when I'm doing retirement planning, they will fit in if they desire to, but I should not. My planning should not affect their ambitions. But the plan that I have for me and my wife is beyond what we do, which is financial planning. By the way, in our kind of profession, the older you grow, the finer you become. So the more experience you have, the more complex situations you're able to work with. So our retirement plan perfectly fits well with what we want to do. We'll continue to do what we do, to work with families. But the only difference right now is we are planning to create a boutique hotel, but with a home feel. Meaning, you're in a hotel, but you're more or less in a homely space where we can actually have people come over and we're able to, to give them an experience blended with us sharing our experiences. So it's 2 things it's going to do for us. It's going to keep us active. One of the biggest challenges I've seen with my clients as they age is the lack of people to talk to, what to do, and a couple of other things. For us, we believe with that boutique hotel right behind there, anywhere between 25 to 30 rooms, with a fireplace, with a number of amenities, with some good restaurant, that every single day we get an opportunity to interact with our guests. And like you've seen, the beautiful place in terms of the birds, like I shared with you, it's right by the lake. We're putting a forest around it. We are believing that from our home here, every single day we'll get to meet new different people in that space to be able to learn, but also to be able to share. And we believe when we're able to do that, it will give us purpose, but above all, we'll be able to play a part in terms of our community.
We're sharing about your real estate and where it all began.
Yeah.
Kindly reshare where it all started for you to the point where we're now seated in your home here in Kauku.
Just like any other person, all of us have unique experiences. Ours was an interesting one. When our family had grown to, I think, 2 kids, by then we were very comfortable in an apartment until when we had 2 kids, and of course with the helper, we need a bigger space. And by then, being a finance person, I was saying, okay, fine, do we continue to rent, or we go into for rent to own? Meaning, the money as opposed to I'm paying out for rent, I'd rather pay it part of that for ownership. So we got our first property in Nigeria, which by then And the years we're talking about is what, 2011. And it's different from the Nigeria now. Good property. I mean, on face value, it was a fantastic option. We didn't know what we know now. And we moved in, very good space, but it had its own challenges. You know, like something that you haven't really built to your own spec, it has its own challenges.
You bought the property?
Yes, we bought the property, and we kept finance. Ideally, we were moving away from where we are renting, and we're not getting any value for ownership. So we paid it, but we are servicing it. So basically, you're paying your rent. We paid, I think, 60% down payment. And then our rent payment that we were previously paying was now contributing for our total ownership. So we were actually continuing to pay rent, but to own. So literally, we had owned the property, and we were paying on a monthly basis to pay out the balance. But now it became very more expensive because, unlike the previous property where we were only paying rent, and if you have any major breakdown, the landlord will probably come and fix it. Now, because now you fully own it, it's more expensive. The unfortunate part is the workmanship wasn't good, and which goes on tell you in terms of face value. The tiling would come out. The water piping system wasn't the best. It was challenging. We stayed there for 8 months, and you know, when you're really frustrated and you get an opportunity. We're staying in between 2 Sudanese homes, and I think they wanted to come stay together, and they recommended. They gave us an offer. Would like to, if you're interested. The whole objective for them was to come together, and the family on the left was also known to the right, family on the right. So it made a lot of sense for them to have, and they had married sisters, and that's why they are close. And I think they used to work down Sudan and then come, and I think, as you know, as families become bigger, so they gave us an offer, and because of the challenges we had already faced, I felt it was a good offer. We were able to fully clear whatever is outstanding, and we took it. We took it, but also the biggest challenge then, because prior to moving to Nigeria, we were staying in Chihuahua. So the distance also was a challenge in terms of kids' school. So we went back to Chihuahua this time around. But this time we went back to Chihuahua for a smaller house, old house, smaller space that required a bit of remodeling. Of course, we also got it at a good deal. And then we started to redo the remodeling. Again, unlike your own build to spec, we kept doing different changes, but not as bad as the first one. These were just the beautifying part of it, meaning changing the windows, changing maybe the kitchen. Once we were done with that, we had a comfortable place. And with my wife, I said, listen, how would you like to, which kind of place would you like to retire? And I remember when having that conversation, I was telling me, it would be very great to have a place by the lake. I said, okay, that's good. Because sometimes you do affirmations. You say, okay, fine, the lake, okay. And with a bit of forest, okay. And as you have this conversation like I'm sharing with you, you may not do something immediately, but it somehow starts to push your subconscious mind. And all of a sudden I started looking for, okay, which places can we be able to get at an affordable rate that is by the lake and not very far from Kampala? And I remember, actually, this property was recommended to me by a friend of ours. They were already staying into this estate. So, and they had I told them, I'm looking for a place that actually can have a lake view and a forest. And they had actually proposed him to buy. So he told me, there's a good place. I think you need to look at it. And we arranged one of the weekends, and we came. It was a bush, but we could see the lake. I said, okay, fine, we can see the lake, but so far. But I remember, I said, based on the price, because the price by then was what? About 21 million shillings with flexible payment terms.
Which are we talking about?
2014. About 21 million shillings. And we said, anyway, we had part of it. We said, now, why not? Let's see the lake. Let's have a benefit of doubt. And that's how we came here. And then later on, we kept expanding all the way to the lake. And actually, we expanded more pretty after the construction, because we got about 25 decimals here. And then the other part we expanded later on. So I decided to design the plan. And all this I was getting from experience working with multiple clients. I'm very observant. When I'm working with most of my clients, I'll go to some of my clients' premises and residences, and I see they are quite big. And they're only optimizing maybe 10 or 15%. I remember asking one of my clients, how often do you go to the garden? And she told me, maybe once in a year. And I told her, how much do you spend on the garden? Actually, the conversation started from the gardening. So we're having a meeting, and she told me, I'm very frustrated. My gardener is leaving, and my two gardeners are leaving, and the person that is remaining behind is not as good as the two. So I said, okay, why are you so touched on the garden? I thought the gardening is just a garden. And she told me, no, there's a lot that goes through this planting in this. So she shared the whole scope. I said, okay, how much are you paying for this? And the money was a lot of money. I said, you're paying this amount of money for a gardener? She told me these are professional gardeners. So I said, okay, fine. From a financial perspective, how much are you paying? You're paying this much. You're going there once a year. Why is it so important? Well, she was able to give me her reason that when I look into that place, I feel relaxed. And sometimes I like to walk there with bare feet. That was her justification. But when you put the financial part of it, it doesn't make sense. But again, I said, if I were in her place, what would I do? So good enough, I've always shared with my wife every single thing we do. She's my business partner. And I said, okay, fine. If there are things we need to look out for when we're building our home. We don't need to have steps to struggle, because I will notice that you actually struggle with steps. But then by then we didn't have the view. So one of the major reasons actually why we went up is because we wanted a view of the lake. We are saying, okay, fine, we have this paper, we don't have control what's going to happen next in that other place before we acquired all the way down. So we said, okay, the only stairs we'll have is up. But then, as we are old, we need to have a provision to where we can come to sleep. So that room right there is fully customized to make sure that actually we can have the same experience like we are having up. Okay, so we thought about it that way. We said, okay, fine, we should be able to move. I don't want to move a long place to struggle for cleaning. When you're older, you struggle in terms of cleaning. So we don't need a big space. So when we put down all our different specifications, we then invited our architect and told him we would like something like this. So he came up with about 4 different plans. Of course, they changed later on as we moved. And like you said, when COVID happened, then we put that additional, that wasn't the main plan. So a few small things came up. Also my private office, which is in my master bedroom as well. Those came in after COVID. Never anticipated that actually you need a home office. So we created. So small things kept changing. But if you ask me, is this something that definitely I was looking at our retirement home? This is our retirement home. And we built it to detail, to the nitty-gritties, to the selection of the places, to the security doors, everything. And we're able to execute it to what it is. And of course, Madame is the one that goes extra miles up with the beautifying place. That's not credit to me, that's hers. Yeah, I mean, a sitting place. If you notice, even the dining number of chairs, and even on the top, and we wanted an experience where we can actually easily interact as she's cooking and all that. And if I had to do it all over again, yes, definitely would do the same thing, because we believe smaller space, which is very important, because later on, very many people build very huge homes, and when they're of age, they want to actually live in a smaller place. Yeah, but I'm grateful that from my work, I was able to see some of these things. And like I've shared with you, Edgar, all of us are unique. That's to me and her. But someone still is probably very comfortable in a very big place. You know, we are all unique, and there's no right or wrong. But the most important thing is it the thing that definitely you want? Many times when we work with our clients, we actually create their perceptions on what they want. Many times we don't know what we want. But when I'm able to see, hey, this looks like actually I can do this, then I'm working with one of my clients, and they're putting up a 3-star hotel, and I kept telling her that no, as I continue to work with her, we continue to define or to fully understand what she wants, and that's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is you being able to fully define what you definitely want, and sometimes you can't do it on our own. You just want someone to be able to give you a perspective, to give you an idea. And the same way we sat down and actually said, it's what we want. But we don't know how to bring it to life. And then they're able to bring it to life and say, oh, but this corner is too long, this is too big, this is too... We need to do the same thing for all aspects of our life. Be it family, be it our financial planning, be it for retirement, be it for estate planning.
What do you know today, having gone through 3 projects, that you would probably share as form of nuggets to someone who would like to build a home that is customized to them, that has a soul to them, in terms of getting who to help them put it together, their dream, your business partner, supervising, getting materials, bringing to life what you really want as a home.
Just like in our space where we are financial planners, we're experts at financial planning. But we're not experts in interior designing. We are not experts in landscaping. We are not experts in, in the different aspects. So, but for me, I think what's very key is if you're building something, build something that you can fully optimize. Sometimes there are things you just want to have that will not actually optimize. Because of that, you'll find that, yes, it's part of your property, but you're not optimizing it, you as an individual, or you as a family, or you as a whole unit. And the best way to do it, list down what exactly you need. Because the house definitely you need when you're in your maybe 30s will probably be different from what you did when you're 80s. And sometimes we build without the end in mind. We build and say, it's a good to have right now, but will it be of purpose then? And some people then say, no, I'll repurpose it then. The whole objective is gone. The whole objective of you, the fact that you're actually going to repurpose it then is really gone. You can always give justifications that, it's a big place, I want to rent it out, you didn't build for purpose. Because if you build for purpose, you would actually build it in a way that you would not have to repurpose it there. But the most important thing is get professionals on your journey for majority of the things. There are professionals across all spaces. And pay for professional fees. It's okay. It saves you a lot.
How were you able to reach out? How did you get these people you talk about, the professionals?
Today, with the social media space, all information is on your fingertips. And today you even see proof of concept prior to. So I believe today you have more disposable options to you. But on our end, the architect that did this was a recommendation from a friend. I'd seen some work they had done, and then I only asked out, can you give me their contact, and I'm able to share with them exactly what we want. Because one thing that I think each and every one of us needs to understand is we are totally unique. What will please Edgar is different from what will please Tony. And the most important thing is being able to have your self-actualization and be able to know this is what's going to... You see, Edgar, in my business, in my kind of work, every single day I'm looking at 2-3 businesses. Because I'm either working with business owners, or I'm planning to make an acquisition, or an acquisition for my clients, and different things. But one thing I always shared with people is, if I didn't know exactly what I want, because every single business everyone talks about is profitable, is turning around good revenue. So you're able to say, can I jump into this? Can I jump into this? Can I jump into this? But one thing that I've gotten to understand over my journey is, what exactly would work for me in my circumstances? It's not only money. It's not only about the returns. But how does it fit in what I'm doing? How does it fit with my passions? And all these other things. But because most people actually would jump onto everything. In our space, if you actually do that, because every other day you're looking at a business, this is the kind of revenues bringing in, how much profit margins making, you will easily be taken away. But the more you actually get clarity on exactly what needs to be done, and you can how? Getting a professional to help you work on that, because they're able to point out, hey, you need to look at this. Hey, I think you're really strong in this space, or this really fits into what you're doing. And then over a period of time, because everything requires preparation, then you have rightful preparation for it, and then fully execute it. One of the things I love about my job is to see the transition. Today, I think one of the most exciting projects that I'm working on, you probably know about that project, the Kembabazi project, Kembabazi village, right across the police, the police headquarters. So there's a project that actually 3 of my clients are contributing. So there's the Kembabazi restaurant, which is the famous Kembabazi, almost a 40-year-old business that is going through a repositioning right now. And then we have repositioned it with a client of mine who's in oil and gas, who is going to put a petrol station and a Java house and a drive-through KFC. And then adjusted, you have another property, which is a commercial property. So bring all the 3 people from scratch and then to try to optimize that asset to what it is and how it is turning out to be. It's just like the trees behind. From seeing a plain ground to, and hopefully maybe a year from now when you guys come over for a cup of coffee, you'll probably see that the trees will probably be on a different height. So the ability to see those kind of transitions have taught me one thing, that preparation is everything. And that's why I was telling you, when we actually talk about financial planning, I don't want you to start planning now and put away money, but I want you to know first. There are things I need to know about. And it's okay for me to know about them maybe the first year. And then plan on how I'm going to maybe take part in the second year. Or maybe start with something small and then see how I can scale it over the years. So the small changes is what really makes a whole big difference. And in my work, I get to see that. I get to see the transition and I get to appreciate the process. I really encourage everyone is be able to define exactly on what you want and then spend most of the time preparing for it. I think that will give you more satisfaction because it's different from when you chase something that you think you want, only to get it and then say, okay, it's not that kind of satisfaction that I wanted to achieve. Then let me pursue something else. You've lost the most key element, which is time, which is different from a person who has fully focused and given clarity and able to execute to what I think is most satisfying to them. One of my biggest constants that I keep sharing with friends, we cannot tell who is going to be your in-law. But we're all hoping that whoever will be your in-law, because whoever your son or daughter brings, someone definitely would want to love and embrace and see how best you can enable them to move into the next stage of their lives as they move with your kids. What really keeps me awake is how well are others preparing for their children so that together we can both give our children a good head start. Now, not all of us have been given very good head starts, and not every single person has been given a good head. That's not an excuse for you not to at least give the generation that's coming after you a better head start than the one you had. And today you have options. It's not like 20 years ago. The world is becoming one single home and one single place. We have no excuse for us not making it a better place for those that are going to come after us. Because when we do that, we would both have helped our children, because now when our children get their spouses, they're now your children, to have a better head start and make life a better place for themselves. I hope we've been able to give someone an insight, and maybe someone will be able to pick up 1 or 2 things and be able to make better life decisions, because with life it's only you being able to make better decisions than bad ones. That's, at the end of the day, that's it. When we take out all the components, it's really about you being able to take better decisions than bad ones. And as Eiton Capital, we are very committed. We are very committed to help families and individuals to do the rightful planning, and hope we can get them to be able to share their experiences and also encourage others and recommend others also to be able to seek out options and professional services.